So the Vikings just come in and say, oh, you've got a ton of gold and a bunch of losers in bathrobes are the only ones guarding that.
Hi, this is Shelley Siegel, and you are watching Atheist Edge.
Forget for a moment about the 666 things your religious leaders never taught you. How about 10 things they do teach you, but don't even believe themselves? Prayer actually works. Gods can appear to you visually. The earth is only 6,000 years old. Humans were created in their present form. A red guy with goat legs, horns, and a pitchfork. The end of the world is coming soon. The earth is the center of the universe. Multiple languages are due to a punishment from God. The earth was once completely covered in water. Your memories, personality, and consciousness live on after death. It appears these are a list of things believed by fundamentalists. I would point out that these are not universally believed by all Christians. Further, Jim does make the claim that they do not believe this themselves. That is not something that is demonstrated in this text. It seems to me I have met true believers who truly believe the earth is only 6,000 years old. It's very difficult to know the mind of another and to know what another person truly believes. I believe that there are some people who pay lip service to many of these propositions, but I would not be comfortable making the claim that they do not believe this themselves. I believe that many people, many believers believe some of these items and as being truth.
Julius II had more than a few girlfriends and one illegitimate daughter. Leo X charged money in exchange for absolution of sins. Alexander VI, I can't read Roman numerals. Alexander VI had mistresses, illegitimate kids, used church funds to pay for his orgies and opulent parties. Okay, John XII practiced the occult. He was charged with arson, gambling, and murder. Stephen VI, he dug up his predecessor, the former pope, took his corpse to the court and put him up on charges of perjury and illegally obtaining the title of pope. After they found Formosus guilty, Stephen cut off 3 of his fingers and dumped his body in the river. Holy shit. So we know about all the crazy shit popes have done, and there's actually a book called The Pope Unzipped, and it talks about all the orgies and all the opulent little festivals they had. And the main one in my mind is indulgences. Indulgences are, forget all the rest of it. It's what built all these structures that you still see today. It's absolving people of their sins if they pay enough money, which is wrong on about 9 different levels to me. If you have enough money, you can get into heaven easier.
You know, that's how the Viking Age started.
How so?
So, well, the Vikings showed up in the I think it was Lindisfarne in Northumbria. And what had been going on was that people would come to the monks, the monastery, and they would be bringing over their gold or whatever, and they would pay for their way into salvation with material funds. So now you have this monastery that's chock full of gold that people have been donating to save their souls. Now, these are not monks like in the Kung Fu movie monks. You know, these guys are not quite as combat ready as the Kung Fu monasteries.
Yeah.
So the Vikings just come in and say, oh, you've got a shit ton of gold and a bunch of fucking losers in bathrobes are the only ones guarding that.
Oh, shit.
So yeah, that's how the first Viking raid started. And it was so lucrative because you just have to keep doing that for another couple 100 years.
Sure.
Many Muslims point to the brief passage in the Hadith as evidence of a miraculous scientific prophecy when the stars are put out, air quotes, right? This is patently ridiculous because Chinese astronomers have been recording violent supernova explosions for at least 500 years before the birth of Islam. Well, I actually agree. We tend to look at religions in a certain way. Well, we always are trying to verify what the text is actually saying. And some of the ways that religions have found a way to stay relevant is by pointing out significant, obvious facts and using it as a way to verify what's already in their book. So people who lived back then, who was actually writing the text, they observed certain things. And a lot of these observations were repeated throughout history or in their day. And what they did was they used these as signs from the gods or the god to point out what would happen and what wouldn't happen. And when you're writing a religious text or a religious book, it's very important that you give your followers something to go off of in order to verify why your text is correct. So I really don't see a reason why this is actually something to be pointed to as a way of verifying their beliefs. It doesn't make any sense, and we wouldn't do that with any other thing. For example, I could make a scientific prediction, but I wouldn't look at the stars and exactly when certain planets would align to prove that a scientific theory that I have about something completely unrelated is true. It just makes no sense.
The practice of Tzniut forbids Jews from exposing their elbows, knees, or collarbones in observance of biblical law. One of the purposes of Tzniut, modesty, in Jewish society is to liberate women from exactly these social pressures and constraints, says Chana Sosevsky in an article in Jewish Action, referring to the pressure on women to do all that they can to look perfect. Sosevsky says, the halakha is designed to make the world relate to a woman as a person and not as a female. The laws regarding lengths of skirts and sleeves, etc., are set as guidelines which limit the exposure of a woman's body and should serve as a reminder to her as to comport herself with dignity. Women who see Tzniut as an injunction to cover up and hide themselves miss the point entirely, says Sosevsky. Tzniut is meant to de-emphasize the physical in order for the intellectual and spiritual aspects of oneself to shine through. Once women understand this, Tzniut becomes a tool, an advantage, rather than a restrictive element in their lives. And while there is some information about men following Tzniut by always wearing long pants and long sleeves, the vast majority of the restrictions apply only to women. Like so much of religion, it's one more attempt by religious men to put women in their place. And while women like Sosevsky find a way to live with it and claim that it gives them freedom, men like Rabbi Henkin are much more blatant in proclaiming Tzniut's actual purpose, which is to prohibit a woman from standing out and from being outstanding. She must not act in a play, paint a mural, play an instrument, or otherwise demonstrate special skills in front of men, lest she attract attention and her movements excite them. It never ceases to amaze me when religious men find themselves unable to control their sexual desires and they blame women and want to put restrictions on women so that they don't have to deal with a problem that is clearly their own.
Miracle? Cheap parlor trick? Or just a made-up story, an attractive folk tale repeated by a source who could make up stuff when it suited him, the genealogy and nativity stories? It was time for Peter and Jesus to pay a 2 drachma temple tax, so Jesus told Peter to go catch a fish. Inside the fish's mouth, he explained, there will be a 4 drachma coin. Take it and give it to them for my tax and yours. Matthew 17:24. The type of fish Peter caught is not mentioned in the Bible, but for some reason tilapia is known as St. Peter's fish.
If the earth was 10 feet closer to the sun, we would all burn up. 10 feet farther away and we would all freeze to death. But seriously though, this is the type of fucking rubbish that is being taught in many Sunday schools, Bible study groups, and social media sites across the country. In case you were wondering, Earth's orbit is elliptical and its distance from the sun varies by over 5 million kilometers over the course of any given year. The actual habitable zone, aka the Goldilocks zone, for life as we know it, orbiting any star roughly the same size and type as ours, is approximately 39 million miles wide. So
Oh,
they got
are
that
you
a little.
saying that part of what you hear in church is bullshit? Oh no, tell me it ain't so.
I don't know if I've ever heard someone say 10 feet or even 10 miles, but I've heard similarly ridiculous claims that, that somehow our habitable zone is so narrow that but they forget how wild our orbit is.
And the fact that it just doesn't matter. If the queen had balls, she'd be king. Well, she doesn't. That's why she's the queen.
If your sister had a dick, she'd be your brother.
A man named Jephthah was promised a promotion at work under one condition. The elders of Gilead told Jephthah that he would become the top-ranking general if he succeeded in conquering Ammon. Jephthah accepted the offer and swore an oath to Yahweh. Whoever comes out from the doors of my house to meet me when I return in peace from the Ammonites shall be the Lord's, and I will offer them up for a burnt offering. Jephthah's forces routed the Ammonites, and he was met at his doorstep by his daughter. Did he think it was going to be a stranger? We have this question here. So in summary, he gave his daughter 2 months to go into the mountains and cry about still being a virgin. Then he killed her as promised.
Oh. But why?
Yeah, I don't understand. I don't know. It's not apparent to me what the lesson I'm supposed to learn or what I'm supposed to understand from this.
That's true. Yeah. I think, I don't know, it's almost like, like a Grimm's fairy tale. That doesn't really have a very good point.
And just a really sad ending.
Yeah. But it does really like fetishize blind faith and obedience. That's the ultimate thing that is desirable, and it's
so the question is
gross.
She was subservient to him and he killed her. Are we supposed to expect that she was still rewarded in the afterlife for this?
Yeah, probably.
Only a maximum of 3 prophets are allowed to speak at any given church service. Well, the more prophets you have speaking, the greater the risk they may contradict each other.
One day, Yahweh got all butthurt that Moses' son was not yet circumcised and sought to kill Moses for his heinous treachery. But fear not, when Moses' wife Zipporah stepped in, lopped off the foreskin with a sharp rock and threw it at Moses' feet, Yahweh decided to spare his life. Actually, if you read through the passage, you don't need to read through the passage. Probably one of the best things you can do is look up a band called The Residents, and they have an album called Wormwood that is all a bunch of Bible stories. One of the songs on that Wormwood album is called Bridegroom of Blood, and it's about this very story. It's something they don't really teach you in Sunday school because it's kind of gross and weird, and God needs to run away from a bloody foreskin thrown at Moses' feet. I don't know.
Joseph Smith never wanted multiple wives, but God sent an angel with a flaming sword to coerce him. And if you believe that, I've got some magical healing crystals to sell you. At least a dozen of his 40-plus wives were already married to other Mormon leaders. Check out this chart. The ages of the women who married Joseph Smith at time of marriage. Check out all these beautiful little dots. Look at the age ranges. 89% of 1830s and 1840s couples would fall in this green range between 14 to 24-ish. Sometimes we like to ascribe motivations to those who invented the original God beliefs. It's almost an attempt to extend the benefit of the doubt to them, that they were just ignorant hominoids trying to make sense out of their newfound cognitive abilities and reconcile them with a tumultuous environment and competing populations. They needed to establish and maintain control of their burgeoning populations in order for them to succeed. Or perhaps we'll say they were just trying to make sense out of death and quell their fear of the unknown. Biological creatures have an imperative imprinted on our genes by evolution to maximize our offspring. Everything that reproduces does so with this inherent inherited goal, not in mind, but encoded, even we high-minded apes. This was the work of the first conmenoids, just like they were the first innovators, sculpting round stones into wheels in our archetypical image of the dawn of invention, gaining for themselves advantage over their fellow apes, able to procure more food and resources, attract more mates, and proliferate more efficiently than their contemporaries. So too, there was another ape, industriously concocting a fiction to gain a similar advantage. Why hunt? Why gather? Why labor and suffer when all one need do is tell a clever story their fellow apes are too gullible to question? Of his 49 or so wives, only Emma Smith was legally wed to Joseph. They had 11 children, 5 of whom survived to adulthood. One can only speculate how many people are alive today carrying around Joseph Smith's genetic makeup. At least 500 of them met for a reunion in Salt Lake City, Utah in August 2018. With his arguably clever story, Joseph Smith fulfilled his biological imperatives quite precipitously. While today's Latter-day Saints still regard him as a prophet and holy man, we can, from the outside, see him for what he truly was, a highly successful, though unscrupulous replicator.